One of the titles that I used recently that got a really high open rate was "This really irritates me."
It is kind of clickbaity.
I don't think it's clickbaity because I really talked about what irritated me.
It was a 45-minute podcast and we were arguing for 42 minutes.
If you're going to want income and clients, you're going to have to learn the business side. You can't just stick your head in the sand.
Do you have any actionable tips on writing good email titles?
The whole point of a title is to create curiosity.
What is a good open rate?
I've seen people with 40%, but I really think if you could have anything above 50%, that's great.
We are even more aggressive. We go in every 30 days, and if someone did not open any of our last 3 emails, they're out.
Well, we know to be opening your emails, don't we?
What are your thoughts on Russell Brunson, who says you should be sending emails daily?
Well,
there are other marketers, they will have these conversations on StreamYard or Riverside. And if any of your potential buyers or past buyers say something nice, you clip that and add it to your testimonials.
You sure do. That's a perfect way to get testimonials.
How long are your emails?
I've had many people not open emails for 6 to 7 weeks, and I put an offer out there and they buy.
It just sounded like we were trying a little too hard.
If you build it, they will come philosophy does not work. Like, you have to be out there actively promoting your art.
Do you use any AI tools for writing marketing copy?
I believe you should find out what works for your business, and the best way to do that is by...
In today's episode, we're talking to Sheely, a digital marketing expert who helps artists and small businesses get more clients.
We'll delve into why the "if you build, they will come" philosophy will keep you poor.
Stick till the end to learn the top tips to grow your email list and the 3 types of content every business owner should be producing to be successful. Sheely, what mission are you on?
I am on a mission to help service-based entrepreneurs and just entrepreneurs in general learn that marketing can be fun. It doesn't have to be this big, heavy, complicated strategy that a lot of, I think, online people make it up to be.
Just to take a step back, what is good marketing?
Good marketing is really about having conversations. Again, it's about going out there, engaging with people, and it's about clearly communicating who you are, who you serve, and how you can help them. And it really is, there's 3 good elements to good marketing, and it's you have to know your audience, and you have to make sure you're speaking to the right audience. You have to know what they want and create offers around them. And then the most important thing is the messaging. Are you using the language that your clients or potential clients are resonating with? Are they self-identifying as with the words that you're using? Does it resonate?
Do you have more specific expertise within marketing?
Well, mine is really around list building and personal branding. I have spent 10 years as a personal branding photographer, and I really helped people learn how to develop their personal brand. Your personal brand is, if you're a solopreneur, we're the face of our brand. People really want to know who they're working with and what you're all about before they're ever going to pull their wallet out to spend money with you. And so we have to be really solid as solopreneurs and entrepreneurs of developing a really cohesive personal brand. So what is a personal brand? It's your name, it's your face, and it's how you make people feel. And so having a really strong, solid personal brand across all your social media, your podcasting, your website is really important because, again, it goes into what we talked about earlier. Are you clearly communicating the things in your personal brand through the content that you're putting out, which is how you make people feel, that shows maybe not only who you are and who you serve, but how you're different from your competition, how you would be different and stand out from all the other people that they could potentially be working with.
I'd like to dive into what kind of content you think a solo entrepreneur or even a small business owner should be producing. And for the concrete example, so my business, I have a land investing business. I buy and sell raw land, so no improvements, no homes, nothing like that. And one question I had to a previous guest was, land is, sure, every parcel of land is unique, but at the end of the day, when you're selling vacant land, you're essentially selling the same product that every other land investor or real estate agent specializing in vacant land is selling. So how do you differentiate yourself?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to where you first about the types of content that you should be putting out with a personal brand. I always say there's 3 different types of content that we should be putting out as solopreneurs, as anyone that's showing up in the online space. And the first is that content that connects. They have to know, like, and trust you on a personal level before they're ever going to move to the next step of potentially building a business type relationship with you. So you need to have just that connection point, talk about your vision, your values, the passion. They have to be able to get to know you on a personal level before we're ever going to get moved to the next step. So the first type of content that I always say you need to be putting out with your personal brand is that connection content. We don't want to be all things to all people. And there are going to be certain people that are going to connect with you. There are going to be certain people that are going to connect with the person that, might be your competitor. And it comes on that personal level. And if we are going to be in a relationship, we want to make sure that we are a good fit. So we want to make sure that we're connecting. I used to be a photographer, and I really put a lot of my own vision, my own values. Like, I was a mom of twins. I enjoyed certain things being from Texas. I liked barbecue. And those are just those, we used to say, would you go have a beer with this person? Like, is it somebody that you want to actually be with? Because if you're going to be in a relationship where you're actually doing business with them, you want to have a connection of some type. So the connection type is, are there just little common points personally in your life that, they can be like, oh yeah, me too. I think that's fun, or I like to drink coffee, or I like to go hiking, whatever it is, to just start to develop that personal relationship.
Does this then look like almost like you're making vlog
Like
type
personal
videos?
vlogging,
Or
yeah.
is it just that you're dropping in to, say, your more polished promotional pieces, bits of personal information about yourself?
Well, the content that's really resonating right now with people online is organic. The world has seen enough polished professional photos. Think back to the Instagram days when everybody's feed looked perfectly aesthetic. People want raw, organic. They want good connection. And it could literally be, if you're on Instagram, it's a reel of just what does a day in the life look for you, showing you at a coffee shop, showing you maybe meeting with a client, showing you, like just what does a day in the life look like with you? Or what does it look like to work with a client? It's a lot of behind the scenes kinds of stuff. Just again, you're just inviting people into your world and letting them get to know you on a personal level. So for me, it wouldn't be necessarily, and I think that's very brand specific too. Maybe if you're an attorney or something like that wants a little bit more professional polished, it would be just having some lifestyle images on your About Me page, or, having a couple of maybe lifestyle videos on your YouTube channel. So it really is a very personal choice, and that's why it's a personal brand. What level of your personal life, of your personal side, do you want to reveal, and how much of it a lot of people are like, nope, my kids are off limits. There's nothing, my kids are not going to be anywhere in my brand. And that's fine. And other people are like, I'm a mom, I'm taking my kids to school, they're going to be part of my brand. So it really is, what is authentic to you and what is in alignment with your brand that you want to, again, portray in those visions and your values and your passions.
So what were the other two? You mentioned 3, right?
Okay. Yeah, so the first one is you want to make content that connects. The second one is you want to make content that positions you as the professional. So that's where you're going to be more of the educator. You can talk about, different ways that you can use vacant land, different ways that you can, different types of investment opportunities. Maybe people are trying to figure out how to finance the vacant land, or they're trying to figure out what, that's where you are going to think about, like, what questions do you get asked most by your clients? Like, what are your most common asked questions, and how can you make content around that? And so I always encourage my clients, I'm like, just keep a running list of all the questions that, you get asked frequently, and what comes up frequently, and how can you make content around that? Because again, that's the content that's going to resonate with someone who is probably out there thinking about potentially investing in vacant land, and they have these questions that they're wondering. And if you're providing valuable content for them, then they're naturally going to start following and connecting with you because you're educating them on the topic.
Although I do have a question there in that I think with educational content, we've found, and I don't know if this is the case for everyone else, I'll just speak personally, but found that it doesn't always perform as well as we thought it would. And I think sometimes that may have to do with the mismatch between what you as maybe the subject matter expert thinks that your clientele wants and what they're actually thinking. So how do you discover what it is that your clients are really looking for when it comes to educational content?
Well, I find two kind of gaps that we as professionals, we're the experts, we're so close to it and we think we know what they want. And you're very right. The first gap is that we think we know what they want. And a lot of times what I'm finding is we are so far advanced in that journey that we may even need to go back like 10 steps and even think of what was it really like to be at the beginning of that journey? What questions are they commonly asking? And the best way to do that is to go and actually do some research. Talk to some of your clients and say, before you met me or before you started working with me, what were you wanting? Like ask them, like, what were your pain points? What types of answers were you looking for? And that's the content you need to put out. The best thing we can do is actually just go maybe do some research and interview some of our clients and then say, okay, well, when you were working with me, what were some of the things I was able to help you do? And then you can kind of get into the transformation that you helped them with. And then at the end, you can say, okay, well, after working with me, what were some of your wins? Like, what were your transformations? And that, when you hear it from the client, and I always, when I'm coaching people with this strategy, I'm like, get your person on a Zoom call. Just say, hey, can you do a 15-minute Zoom call? I have some questions for you. Make sure you're really paying attention to the languaging they're using, because a lot of times the languaging we're using as the professional is not the language that the client might be resonating with. So we want to make sure that we're using the words, the phrases, the verbiage, and everything that our potential clients are using, and we're not just so caught up in this industry speak or this, because again, we're advanced, we're the experts. And we need to remember that we might be at, 100 and they're just trying to go from 0 to 5 or 0 to 10. So we have to go back and look at and say, what is the languaging and what are the topics that people at that stage need to hear?
Yeah, let's go to the third one. I'm eager to hear the next.
Okay. And the last one is you want to invite. And this is where I see so many people like actually drop the ball. We're out there, we're connecting, we're making these fun videos, we're positioning, we're giving all this great advice. But then I see so many people, it's not super clear what step they want you to take next. Do they want you to go download their freebie? Do they want you to book a discovery call? Or so there's either no call to action because it's not clear, or there's so many different calls to action that the person's confused. They're like, do they want me to book a discovery call? Do they want me to download the freebie? Am I supposed to go? And so a confused mind takes no action. So you want to make sure that you're making you're positioning, you're creating content that invites them. You invite them into your world. So what would be the next logical step that you would want them to take with the content that you're creating? And that's going to be different for different brands and different people. But for instance, if your next step is just to offer up the freebie so that they can get on your list, that's what you need to be making content around. Sign up for this great resource. I have this resource for you. It's going to help you, subscribe to this list. You want one clear call to action that really invites them to start on that journey with you.
How is that different than doing a call to action at the end of, say, an educational video?
I think it's very important. So sometimes when you do educational videos, they're so involved in the education and they're thinking about the education that they don't necessarily, remember the call to action. So I think just in my own personal content, I have very specific, just small posts, because you remember, we don't want to overwhelm them, that say, hey, I got a great resource for you, sign up. And so it's simple, it's a clear call to action. They're not getting lost in, trying to watch the educational video or something like that. It's just a simple, or it can really be something, you can get super creative with this, but I just always think of how can we get people to do micro commitments to actually start interacting with us and going on that journey. And I create those out and make them separate posts, or separate pieces of content, just so they don't get lost in the educational videos or the other types of stuff, because sometimes those can just give them so much information that by the time you get to the call to action, they're already like, a little bit overwhelmed or something by just all the content that you just taught them in the educational piece.
You mentioned adding people to your email list is your primary call to action, right?
Yes.
So, one of the things we have noticed when we do our list building as well is like a lot of times the deliverability of the email is really poor. Like we'll have like maybe like 30% open rate or 35% open rate. So, how can we improve that?
So I think there's two things. First of all, it's platform. There are certain platforms out there that probably have a higher deliverability rate just because of the integrity of the platform than others. So I would just look at your platform overall and see if it's a good alignment and maybe what the average deliverability rates are for your platform. I personally love the platform I use is ConvertKit because they do they really do guard the integrity of their platform, and they have they're not one of the more spammy platforms. There's a lot of them out there, so just do your research. So I think you need to look at the platform. But then the second thing is the content. I see this happening a lot. Is people will put random things out into the world to get people on their list, and it doesn't attract people that are in alignment with what they're offering. Say, for instance, you go to a trade show or whatever, and you give away a Amazon gift card, like $100 Amazon gift card, and you're getting people to sign up for your email list. Well, that's attracting people that want a $100 Amazon gift card, not people that actually are interested in your product or service that you're offering. So you really need to think about what types of lead magnets or freebies are you putting out into the world, and are they really in alignment with what you're offering? So back to the land example, Erica. If someone is thinking about wanting to start investing in land, maybe financing it is an issue for them. Like they're trying to figure out how to finance it. So a lead magnet that I could come with is 10 quick ways or 10 ways that you could finance your first property. And that's just if you're looking for the new land buyer, because maybe they're like, it's their dream. They want to own land, but they're like, how do I get started? Or how do I financially make that first investment? So you're working with that beginning land buyer, and you're teaching them some ways that they could actively go out and get financing for that first land, or maybe how to find that first property. It's something simple. And so if you're out there promoting, this is a great way to get started investing in land, that's going to attract people who eventually want to work with you to buy the land. So I would really go back to the very beginning stages of the journey and think of what are some of those initial questions that my potential client might have, and how could I create a small win or a small freebie around that to attract the person that is actually going to be interested in working with me. You want to make sure that you're fishing in that right pond to get the fish. And we're not just attracting a bunch of random people under our list. So I guess to sum that up is that a lot of times we have those lower open rates or those high unsubscribe rates is because we haven't really attracted the right people onto our list, because we're putting a bunch of random things out in the world to lure them on. And then when they get on, they're not interested in what we have to say to them.
So we tried one freebie that really didn't go well. Because we were trying to think along these same lines, like what is it that first-time land buyers really need to know? And we put out a freebie that was essentially like, this is the number one thing you want to look out for when you're shopping for land. And it basically got no engagement. So I guess I'm curious how you figure out what it is that is really going to be a compelling offer for your clientele.
And again, that could be a couple different things. One of the things, and when I hear people say this often, they're like, well, I'm not getting people on my list. And I'm like, well, how often are you talking about the lead magnet? Where is it posted? And they're like, well, I put it in a couple links. And I'm like, your lead magnet is like a baby. You need to be showing that thing off constantly. You need to be talking about it. You need to be promoting it. So it could be a situation where it's just not being promoted enough or talked about enough. to get people consistently engaging with that. So that is the situation that I see a lot of people have. The other thing is back to kind of what we talked about the first. I would go interview some actual land buyers, some first-time land buyers, and say, what are your biggest problems? Like, what are your biggest concerns? And get the languaging, get the phrases that they're using, get that very, and you could even go research this in a Facebook group that's, geared towards first-time land buyers. Like if you don't have people physically in front of you, but go interview or look at the people, look at that languaging, because again, a lot of times we as the experts just miss the mark in the messaging because we're not quite resonating with what they are at that stage of the journey because we've moved on and we're so much further advanced. My thought, I would tell you to really go and get in the trenches and actually interview some people that are in that situation and get some real life data on what they are struggling with, and then put together a compelling offer that would answer that question.
So then should your call to action to your lead magnet, should that be on every piece of content you do, or are there some pieces of content where you don't want to have a call to action because you're purely trying to build up goodwill among new viewers?
So I kind of call it my around the world effect. I make sure that I have put my lead magnet on everywhere at least once or twice a week. Like again, so is it in your email signature? Is it on all of your social media? Are you optimizing the banner at the top of like your Facebook and your LinkedIn pages to promote your lead magnet or your freebie? You just want to make sure like everywhere someone goes to check you out in the online digital space, that they have an opportunity to learn about this freebie. And you just want to literally like billboard and blast it all over the place. Now, that doesn't mean you have to put it in every piece of content, but every place that you go in the online space should have a quick and easy way for people to find that freebie, to sign up for it. And then again, I personally talk about them on at least each of my social profiles once a week to make sure people know that they're fresh and keep them top of mind. And if you're speaking at an event or you're on a podcast, you're sharing that freebie. I always say have a QR code for people to click on and grab the freebie. So it's back to like when you write a book, you have to promote the book. So your lead magnet's like that book. You just have to keep talking about it and keep bringing people into it. And then back to marketing is testing. If you're in a situation where you're like, this isn't landing right, or this isn't resonating, figure out maybe you need to tweak the title. Maybe you need to tweak a little bit of the messaging. Maybe you need to tweak a couple of the photos. Like you don't necessarily have to go back and reinvent the whole thing. It could be something so small. Try tweaking some different things and seeing if it resonates better when you just kind of play with some of those elements.
Erica, I'm surprised you didn't ask a follow-up question on when she said you should interview some of the potential land buyers, because that's actually a very good idea.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that.
Maybe what I'm thinking is not necessarily just our buyers, but also potential buyers. So maybe do a community post on YouTube asking people, "Oh, are you in the market for land? Would you be interested in jumping on a Zoom call with me?"
Yeah,
And
that's good.
We can record it, and if it's good, we can make it live. If not, we just listen to them.
Yeah.
But that's marketing gold right there, because you're getting the phrases, you're getting you're getting exactly what they're saying. And if you can put those phrases and languaging into your marketing materials, that's really going to help you resonate, because they're going to be like, oh man, they get me. Like they truly understand where I'm coming from or what I'm struggling with. And at the end of the day, back to creating those conversations, that's what we're trying to do. We want to make that connection. Like, oh, she really understands what I'm going through. Like she's the person that I want to work with because she has done the research and she can understand me. So it's just about really getting that good knowledge and creating those conversations.
I was also thinking like there are other marketers, they will have these conversations, right? On StreamYard or Riverside. And if any of your potential buyers or a past buyer says something nice, you clip that and add it to your testimonials.
You sure do. That's a perfect way to get testimonials.
So I wanted to know, do you have any actionable tips on writing good email titles?
Wow. So I think that again is going to really depend on your audience. You want to make sure, again, if I'm selling land or I'm selling, you know, children's books, it's very going to be very different. So you want to make sure a title it resonates with your audience. So again, I would lean into the research that you just did and look at those pain points. And if you could call out a pain point in that title and say, like literally say, are you frustrated that, or, are you concerned that you might not be able to afford land? Like call out the pain point. That's good. They're going to be like, oh yeah, maybe I am. I need to open that email. So how can you call out those pain points, or how can you call out the aspiration points? Like, do you dream of owning this dream property? And it gets them curious. The whole point of a title is to create curiosity. So you have to think of how can you say something that's either going to talk into a pain point, an aspiration point, or maybe, something along the journey of transformation that's going to get them curious enough to open up that email. You want them quick, you want them short, but you really want to make them actionable. I personally kind of leaned more recently into softer email titles. I feel like people are getting tired of the really strong sales marketing titles. Like they've seen them, they've done them. So a simple title that kind of creates curiosity is what I'm finding is really resonating with my audience right now, because it seems a little bit more engaging, a little bit more personal, and it's not so much, buy my stuff, or don't miss this opportunity, because they're seeing so much of that. Customers are savvy now, they're smarter, and they're starting to look past that. So I say if you could get really creative with the research you've done to make some great titles, that's what's going to resonate more and stand out in their inbox.
Can you give some specific example from your business? You said you mentioned photography service. Are you still doing that?
I am not anymore. Okay, so one of them that I use for my email, I teach an email course, and I talk about how some of the big influencers are just teaching these systems that maybe they talked about, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They grew their audience maybe at a time when it was just different, and they're still teaching these same things, and they've lost touch with the beginner marketer, that the person who's just trying to start growing their email list, with the person who's just trying to build. And so one of my pain points is that they're teaching these big systems to people that aren't quite there yet. They don't have the bandwidth, the team, or the ability to implement them. So one of the titles that I used recently that got a really high open rate was like, this really irritates me. It was just in all lowercase. And I was talking into a pain point of these people are spending a lot of money on these, courses, and they're not being able to implement any of it because that's not resonating with them, because that person is probably so much further along on the journey that they're not really being able to identify with that new email marketer. So that's just a small, like I was just talking to a pain point of, this really irritates me. And people are like, oh, I want to see what irritates her. So they that created that curiosity, and it hooked them in, and they opened the email.
Well, I would argue that's more markety, right? It's like it is like a kind of clickbaity. I mean, I know you said, or do you think it's not clickbaity? Like, what would you consider
I don't think it's
clickbaity?
clickbaity, because I really talked about what irritated me, and I wasn't high selling them. I was just talking to a pain point of the fact that
Yeah.
there's not a one size fits all. The content of the email was, there's not a one size fits all magic wand approach. Email marketing
Right.
is a
Yeah.
very independent. You have to know your audience, the things that we're talking about, and so I educated them on the fact that they need to be really thinking about their own business, their own email strategy, and not just rinsing and repeating someone else's because they sold it to them in a course and they said it'll work for them. Like, they need to take a more custom approach to their business.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we also use similar titles, so it's not like we're saying we have something better. But what I was trying to say was, you mentioned you started doing or started leaning towards more softer titles.
Mm-hmm.
So what I really meant was that doesn't sound like a softer title. So if that's
Okay.
soft, what is
No.
a hard title?
An example of a softer title was, I think, I'd have to go back and I sent one out last week. It talked about planting seeds in your business. It was simple. And it was all lowercase, planting seeds in your business. And then they opened it up, and it was just a more kind of a letter about how, winter's here right now, but, I went to Trader Joe's last week and daffodils were in season, and that what seeds are we planting in the winter in the months that we're trying to grow? Maybe, the clients aren't coming in right away, that allow you to reap the fruit or the harvest of the spring when it comes. And so it was just a softer email, more just conversational, just bringing them along the journey. Again, talking about that I went to Trader Joe's last week. It had the connection piece, but it also had the positioning piece of I was teaching them about, and then I went in to talk about specific seeds that they could be planting if they're in slower months, and so it's just a little bit of a more conversational email, and it's not so much a intense marketing email that, I'm hard pitching them or selling them.
What is a good open rate %?
I think that's very industry specific. So I've seen people with 40%, but I really think if you could have anything above 50%, that's great. I've seen some of my clients have 60 and 70% open rates. So it just, again, that it's going to depend on your industry and the size of your list and how well you, just what type of list that you have.
And how frequently you are cleaning up bad
Absolutely.
emails and people who don't open, right?
I go in, and that's always one of the strategies I teach my clients is that in order to increase your open rates, is I go in probably once a quarter and clean out all my cold subscribers. I send them an email. I identify who hasn't opened my emails. I send them an email. Do you even want to be on the list? And if they don't even open that email, then they're definitely gone because, why do we want them on our list? And so there's a strategy of cleaning out your cold subscribers, making sure that people still want to be on your list. Because again, we don't want to put people on our list that aren't actually, wanting to be there, that aren't eventually potentially going to be a client for us.
Right. I mean, we are even more aggressive. We go in every 30 days. And if someone did not open any of our last 3 emails, they're out. We don't even
Awesome.
send them. We don't even
Well,
send
we
them.
know to be opening your emails, don't we?
Well, it's primarily because we use MailChimp and it's kind of expensive. So if you have a larger audience size, you're paying maybe in some instances you may be paying like $250 per month, right?
Right.
So the smaller the audience, the better, as long as they're all warm.
Yes, I would go for a small, warm audience any day over a large, colder audience. And I agree. If your audience is bigger and you've got the ability to aggressively clean your list, that's a great thing. You also have to look at the sales cycle, though. For instance, if I were to do that, many people on my list are on my list for at least 90 days or more before they ever make a purchase, just with my launches and stuff. So I wouldn't want to do that because I want to make sure that they probably at least go through one sales cycle. So you kind of need to look at what your individual business looks like as to how often you clean your list.
Well, but we're also talking about opening. Like if someone hasn't opened any of your last 3 emails, like what are the odds that they will actually buy
You'd
from
be
you?
surprised. I've had many people not open emails for 6, 8, 7 weeks, and I put an offer out there and they buy. But that's my sales cycle business. So yeah, that's where there's not a one size fits all approach. You have to know your business and know your clients and decide what's right for you as to how often you should clean your list.
Yeah,
Actually,
I feel
now that I think about it, maybe we do have the wrong approach. Because if I think about how I interact with the people whose email lists I subscribe to, I don't always open the emails. It depends on, what's going on, how busy I am that day. And
Oh, really?
yeah,
Then maybe I'm a little too aggressive. Because I also know
I may miss like 2 or 3, and then I'll open one. And
I also remember there has been more than 4 or 5 instances now where people have come back and are like, "Why am I not receiving your emails?"
Yep. And that's a strategy I actually do. If they haven't opened it, I email them and ask them if they want to be on the list. And if they don't respond back, then you can take them off. But sometimes people are just busy and all that. And you would be surprised how many people are like, oh yeah, I still want to be on your list. Don't remove me. And again, that depends on your bandwidth, your size. But back to, you just have to know your audience, know your business, know your sales cycle, and what's the best for your individual business.
What are your thoughts on the email marketer of all times, Russell Brunson, who says you should be sending emails daily?
Well, if you have the bandwidth to do that, that's great. Back to someone that does not have the bandwidth to be sending emails daily, I don't even want to go down that road. But, and I will tell you, my audience doesn't have the bandwidth to read my emails daily. So I don't believe in the one size fits all approach. I believe you should find out what works for you and find out what works for your business. And the best way to do that is by listening to them, like get their feedback. Like, again, if you have an email with really high open rate, figure out what resonated. If your emails aren't getting opened at all, figure out what you need to tweak. It's that marketing as testing and figuring out what you need to be constantly, switching around in that puzzle to get it to work. I wish there was just a one and done magic wand for all of us, but there's not. And if you find it, we will all be millionaires.
Right. Well, his logic is the more email he sends, the more money he makes.
Well, and to that point though, if I'm in a launch, there are times when I go through launches, like live launches in the online digital space, I will send a lot of emails, like 9 emails over 7 days. And if I'm actually selling something at that time, every time I send out an email, I get a sale. So there's a season in my business that I will do that, but it's not all day, every day, 365 days a year. My list would get exhausted from that. So, if I'm going through an active launch, they'll get a lot of sales promotional emails, but then I'll like dial it back for a while and just send some more casual, lighthearted emails to, because so they don't get that fatigue or exhaustion of constantly getting emails from me.
So how often, when you're not in the middle of launch in a typical, more quiet period, how often do you send emails?
My personal rhythm is about once a week. I will do, but I also believe in segmenting your list and having independent conversations with smaller groups of people. So no, I don't send a big email out to everyone every week. Sometimes if I have, a specific group that maybe opted in on one lead magnet, or I met at one conference, I may, send them a nurture email that's very specifically to that group of people. And that's what I love about email lists. If you have your list segmented and you have people, identified as to how they came into your world or what they're interested in, you can have smaller, more intimate conversations, and you don't have to be constantly blasting your entire email list all the time. Like, for instance, you could have someone opt into the weekly deals section. If they opted into that, you would only be sending the people that want information on the weekly deals. And that way you're not exhausting your entire list who may not be interested in that season of their life in the weekly deals with the weekly deals. But there's always an opportunity with all your other emails. Hey, if you're interested in our weekly deals, click here and you can get them. So it's about having those more intimate conversations and not just treating them as if it's like one massive list that you're just blasting every week.
How long are your emails?
I don't believe in long emails. I would say they're 2 or 3 paragraphs. And I write them in one sentence I write them in a sentence space. I make them very conversational and lighthearted. I don't, people are busy. Lots of bold text, emojis. Make them easy to read. Make them fun. Don't just put so much text in there that I open up see people's emails and I close them right away because there's just so much text in them that my head hurts just by looking at it. So you want to make them light and friendly. At least that's what my audience wants. Back to knowing your audience. But my audience, it doesn't have the time to sit around and read, long, verbose emails. So I keep them 2 to 3 paragraphs, but I always have a call to action. If I'm promoting a podcast, click here and listen to the podcast, click here for more details. So it's a short summary with that little micro commitment of click here to get more information about this. So the people that want to do a deeper dive can always go read the blog post, listen to the podcast, learn more about the promotion or the sale. But it's not all in that email.
How many links would you have in a typical 2-paragraph email?
I would say one or two. Back to what I kind of said earlier, when you have multiple calls to action, a confused mind takes no action. So I really wouldn't give them more than, a couple of, maximum three, just to give them an opportunity to check out some different things. If you're, maybe have a podcast or a YouTube video. There's some people who might be more inclined to watch video. Other people might be more inclined to listen to a podcast. But when you just start loading it up with links, that's when they're just going to be in overwhelm and they're not going to do anything. So sometimes it's one. If I'm going into a launch and I just want them to focus on the launch, my link is strictly to what I'm launching at that point or I'm promoting. Other times, if it's more of a lighthearted kind of email, I might suggest a podcast for them to listen to and a blog for them to read or a video for them to watch, something super simple that kind of, has a variety of options for them to consume content.
Interesting. Do you ever use images or videos embedded inside the email?
I do. I don't use a ton of them because I don't that can affect your deliverability rate. But I think a great image at the top is great. Like the other day when I was talking about the ones with the daffodils, I just took a photo of the daffodils on my table and I put it in there. Again, to make it relatable, make it current. GIFs, I think, are really fun. If you just put a short one in there, it just breaks up the text. It makes it more fun. It makes it more relatable. I don't really put a lot of long videos in there, but I just put short snippets of content that kind of capture the reader's attention.
One question I had was, do you use any AI tools for like writing emails or writing marketing copy or anything marketing related?
I do. I use AI primarily for ideation. For instance, if I'm taking a podcast or a blog or something, my original content, I can put it into AI and I ask it to maybe write me a weekly email to my readers. At that point, I feel like AI has maybe taken and gotten me to the 80-yard line on a football field. It is not done. You can't just copy and paste that out of AI and send it to your list because it's not going to be authentic. It's not going to be sounding in your voice. So you can take that content that AI has helped you with ideation or just kind of, a lot of people start with that blank page, like, I don't know what to say to my list. So it gets you in kind of the momentum, but then you go through, you look for those like golden nuggets of things that you like. You clearly strip out anything that doesn't resonate or that you don't like. You need to make sure it's in your tone of voice. So it's kind of a skeleton that I can use to write my emails, but I don't ever take it in its actual final form and just copy and paste it into an email because that, for me, I find AI to be very kind of fluffy and formal, and that is not my brand at all. So if I did do that, it would not even look or sound like it came from me, and my audience would know that right off the bat.
Yeah, that's what we found as well, right? You were
Mhm.
complaining about the
Yeah.
video scripts.
Yeah, I did not like the AI video scripts.
But I
It
love the
makes it
ideation
too.
piece.
Yeah, no, totally agree. You said it makes it more like salesy, or
Yeah, I mean, it's just it kind of, I don't know if hyperbole is the right word, but it made a lot of the property videos just really a little too salesy. Like it just sounded like we were trying a little too hard.
It sounds like consultant speak to me. I feel like
Yeah.
somebody, from a consultant, like a, big consulting firm wrote it. It's not my voice. So again, that's when you have to take the ideas and make them yours. Like
right?
with your tone of voice, your verbiage, make them your final work. Put your signature on it.
Yep, makes sense. So here's a question that I prepared earlier that I didn't get a chance to ask. So what led you to discover passion for marketing?
Well, so I had three different businesses in three different industries in the service-based industry. And I have a background in marketing. I have a degree in marketing, but I found throughout the common thread through many industries is people are really good at what they do. Maybe they're a good real estate agent. Maybe they're a good physical therapist. In my industry, they were good photographers, but they could not market themselves. And they always say there's two types of people in the photography industry. There's the artist that learn the business side, and there's the business people that learn the art. And I was definitely in that latter category. Business just came to me naturally. And as I was, I was taking people's photos and I was doing the work, but I was more excited about putting together the funnels and the creating content and all that in the marketing. And I started teaching that to my colleagues and my clients because I would show up to take photos and they wouldn't understand even how to start to do the session because they hadn't done some of the basic branding work. Like they didn't know back to, really who they were, who they served, what separated them from the competition, what made them different. And so I really started coaching them before this session, doing all this intensive marketing coaching to teach them what they need to know about their marketing in order to orchestrate a photo session that was very on brand for them. And it wasn't just the cookie cutter. I always say there's 500 photographers that can show up and take a pretty photo of you in a coffee shop with a mug. Like that is a commodity. How are we going to make these sessions on brand and really unique to you? And then after the session, they didn't know how to use their images. They would just collect dust on their hard drive. And that's when I would be saying, okay, we could put them on your website. We could create testimonials. We could do Facebook banner images. We could use them in your newsletters. And so I developed a whole suite of products on the back end, teaching my clients how to actually use their images to actually market their business. So even though it started off as being a photographer, the marketing side just came easier to me. And I found there was such a need for people that are really good at what they do, but they just don't maybe understand the marketing aspect and they don't have the ability to hire a marketing team to just get that help and really learn how to market themselves. And that's what led me into doing this coaching and working with them to teach them how to market their business so that they can save time, do it fun, do it effectively, and then they get to go do what they love, which is serve their clients.
That is an excellent story.
Yeah.
We should have started with that question.
Do you still run any of what were the other two businesses?
Actually, before we get into that, I was thinking our podcast with the episode with Natalie, where she was like, well, you shouldn't worry about marketing. You should just focus on.
I don't think that's exactly what she was saying, but
like, I mean, she was saying the artist with capital A, right? Like, as in like you just focus on the craft and people will find you kind of thing. And I was like, I was disagreeing with her. Maybe we should have Sheely watch that episode and give her thoughts.
Well, high level, I will say I've worked with enough people that if you build it, they will come philosophy does not work. Like you have to be out there actively promoting your art, your fitness business, your travel. You have to be promoting it because so many people are like, oh, if I just do the work, the people are just going to flock to me. And that's a common mindset that I have to overcome with a lot of my clients is that if you build it, they will come. Strategy 9 times out of 10 does not work.
No, I totally agree.
Well, yes, that's what you were saying.
I mean, we were like basically arguing it was like a 45-minute podcast and we were arguing for 42 minutes.
Although I think the argument was a little bit different. It was more about the kind of art you're creating rather than marketing around the art. But yeah.
No, well, what I was arguing was, essentially if you are producing good art, it's kind of a shame that no one else gets to see it, if you're not a good marketer. And I feel like you need to learn marketing skills so that, you can share your art and get some recognition and maybe some income out of it.
That's why they call them starving artists. We don't want to be starving artists. There's a much better future for all of us than the starving artist.
Question on photography. When you were talking about, you have to kind of like differentiate yourself as a photographer. I'm curious to know, how do you do that? Like, is it the type of photography you're doing what differentiates yourself from others? Like, how does that work?
I mean, there can be. I'll be honest with you. Photography, again, is a very saturated industry. There, with the onset of digital cameras, almost anyone can be a photographer. So the way I personally differentiated myself was through the experience. And as I kind of told you with the corporate work that I was doing, anybody could go in and take a photo of a beautiful photo of someone in a coffee shop or whatever. But there were very few, if any, other photographers that I found that could come in and bring the business side of it and teach them the marketing and the branding side prior to the session, and then deliver the types of deliverables that they needed to actually use their marketing and their sales. So that's really what, for me, with the different types of photography, it was about connecting on a personal level. I had people that would come to me because we had connected on a personal level and they wanted to work with me. Photography, especially when you're taking, senior portraits or something like that, you really have to be comfortable with the person that's behind the camera, because that's the person that's going to make or break the session. So it was all about creating an amazing experience for my clients, connecting on a super personal level. And I always told them, I said, if you leave this session feeling like we were just girlfriends hanging out, having coffee, and we were laughing and we were having fun, I said, I did my job. I did my job because you forgot about the camera that was between us. And that was, for me, in my business, the magic of the relationship building, the connection that allowed me to get photos that maybe other photographers wouldn't have gotten, because we had that experience and that relationship. That's how I did it. Other people chose different types of ways to differentiate themselves. But for my personal business, it was all about the experience and the emotional connections.
I guess this gets at one question that maybe a lot of new entrepreneurs have, which is, where should I start? Do I really should I go for what I think is my passion, even if it's right now doesn't seem like it has a huge market? Or should I focus on learning how to be passionate about being an entrepreneur so that I can grow into different opportunities that come my way?
Well, I think it's twofold. I definitely think you have to have a passion. So let's just take the industry of photography for an example. There are a lot of genres of photography where people are really struggling to make money just because it's not as lucrative. And so if you are a photographer and you have to pay the rent, put food on the table, the two following the money in photography is going to be like headshots and corporate work and weddings. Like that's where the money is. So there are times that we all have had to do those types of things to build the business. But you can still be working on the passion projects on the side. So for me, I always led with business first. And because I wanted to enjoy, a lifestyle, and I wanted to be able to afford a lifestyle. So even though I was working within my subset, my passion of photography, I chose very specific genres, the corporate and the headshot work, because that's what was going to allow me to make the income that I needed to be able to support the lifestyle that I clearly need to support. So I think it's one of those things where you can find your lane, but within that lane, there's going to be different opportunities in that lane. And that's where you maybe need to start looking for where the money is, follow the money, if you're needing to make this a sustainable, viable business for you to go for the long haul.
I guess I'm also wondering if it's fair to say that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should probably have some kind of passion or believe that building a business would be something that actually interests you. Because I do think there are a lot of people who are really passionate about what they're doing, and then they think the next step is to become a solopreneur or a small business owner, but they're not really interested in the business side of things.
Well, they could be a freelancer, right?
Yeah. But even as a freelancer, I mean, you still need to treat it like a business, right?
Not necessarily. You can just go one project at a time. What are your thoughts, Sheely?
If it's going to be something you create, like you're starting your own business and you're going to have your own website and social media, like you're going to have to be passionate about the business side, because you're going to, marketing is freedom. If you're going to want income and clients, you're going to have to learn the business side. You can't just stick your head in the sand and go out and take photos and not know your numbers and not know how to market. So if you want to monetize your passion, you have to be willing to lean into the side of the business. That's if you want to monetize it. I'm all about, I love to take landscape photography. I go out and take landscape photography all the time. I don't sell it to anyone because I don't want to monetize it. That's my passion. So that's a hobby. That's something I enjoy. And a lot of times when you do start monetizing your passion, you lose the joy of just the flexibility and the freedom to be creative about it. Because now you're producing work for other people. You're on a schedule. You're using it to pay your bills. So if you're in that situation where you've got a passion, I first of all would really consider, is it something you need to monetize and want to monetize? Or do you want to just keep it a hobby? Because there's really good benefits to both. But if you are wanting to actually monetize it, you've got to be willing to roll your sleeves up and learn the entrepreneurial, the business side. If you want to make it sustainable, the average photographer doesn't even stay in business 5 years. And that's because they don't charge enough to actually make it sustainable. And so if they're charging low rates for sessions, they're having to shoot a ton of sessions just to, keep their head above water financially, and they're burning out. So there's just that, you've got to know your numbers. You've got to know your marketing if you want to make it a sustainable, long-term, thriving business.
Yeah, makes sense. I wanted to know, of all the marketing channels that you have, like top of the funnel, which ones are bringing in the most leads for you at the moment?
I actually do. For me, it's in-person events. When not like in person, like either a Zoom training or an in-person training locally. If I can get someone in front of me and we can start having like real conversations about their problems. I do a business power hour once a month where people come on Zoom and I do a live training, and that just getting on the training and letting them experience what it's like to work with me and giving just a small taste is really what is converting for me. So it's the combination of events and podcasts tend to be where you can have the conversations. It's the more long tail as well. Social media to me is something that's good, but it's gone in 4 hours. So I don't spend extensive amounts of energy on it when we could be, like we're doing here, having a really good conversation and hopefully adding value to somebody. And that's what starts to just build those relationships and create those conversations.
This has been a really interesting conversation. I think we have a number of pointers
Action items.
Yeah, we'll take back. But for anyone who wants to learn more, maybe join some of your courses, how can they reach out to you?
Well, I am at Sheely Neihaus, Neihaus. I'm at Sheely Neihaus on all social media channels, as well as SheelyNeihaus.com. And that has all kinds of information about my freebies, my courses, the email list, and all that. So you can come and just join and we can have fun on the other side.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to be here.